Nah, I'm not gonna do that. When it comes to modding and plugins and other third-party tools, Final Fantasy XIV, despite its terms of service stating otherwise, is incredibly lenient. Officially speaking, all of these tools are entirely forbidden and can result in account punishment, so your funeral. However, according to Square Enix themselves, for the most part, they can't see that you use these tools, assuming of course the tool is only visible from the client side of the field. So they wouldn't know any better unless you outright admitted to using it, or passed around picture proof that you did. Long story short, as long as you draw within these lines, you can do whatever you want. Throughout this video, I will be referring to plugins, third-party tools, and mods, and whatever else, all simply as quote-unquote mods, as while they may differ in functionality and use cases, for the average user, the difference is insignificant, and the parts where they might differ and it might matter, it will probably come up all on its own anyway. Now, when it comes to mods, players that have an opinion on the matter often may be of the opinion that anyone that uses less mods than them are naive, missing out, or are overly cautious, while anyone that uses more mods than them are either excessive or flat out cheating. Now, specifically on the cheating part of this conversation, things get complicated depending on who you ask and how low the bar is. It can be argued that any mod that gives a player an advantage that a player without that mod wouldn't have could be considered cheating. And unlike many other moddable games, the argument they could just use the mod too falls a lot more flat because console players cannot use mods, ever, in this case. Now, from this point onward, I will be listing examples of mods, remember we use this word for everything here, with gradually more and more extreme benefits, while also including, to the best of my ability, justification for why someone would see no problem with using a particular mod. And I would love to know from you in the comments both how far you personally like to go, just visual stuff, any convenience stuff, and how far you think is fair and reasonable. Where do you draw the line? Finally, for various reasons, I will not be actually showing these mods in actual use in this video. Now, let's get to it. Level 0. Literally third-party apps. The TOS in regards to mods is rather wild, and can be interpreted as including applications such as Discord or OBS being open on the PC as illegal while playing 14. The main time where this detail comes up is in the context of counter-exampling when discussing what is and is not allowed by the TOS. The TOS is so draconic that we can't even be sure what counts and doesn't count, is sort of the idea. Considering the development team themselves sometimes streams gameplay, we can sort of assume that this one is fine by their standards. Consoles are also able to record, stream, and access Discord. Level 1. Mathematical time savers. My accountant is writing things down really fast. Also known as ACT and FF logs. ACT is mainly used to keep track of a ton of information in the battle log. The primary, but not exclusive way this is used is for DPS meters, so you can see how much damage everyone is doing in real time. This could be useful for certain jobs to determine more actively who to use their personal buffs on, notably Astrologian and Dancer. Other things ACT can do includes showing the exact HP of your target rather than keeping you guessing. You can also do other things by simply reading the game data like this, but a lot of it is at this level of advantage, so we will return to this when this comes up again. FF Logs summarizes game data so you can get a better overview of everything that happened in a fight, down to the nitty-gritty details. As only one person needs to carry this for everyone to benefit, console players are not entirely blocked off from perusing it either. For the most part, where FFlog shines the brightest is when players use it to look for their own mistakes or help each other improve. When it looks the worst is when players use it as a mallet to bash each other with. Yes, really. Superior launchers. It is not a secret that the official Final Fantasy XIV launcher sucks. It is slow, janky, and weird. Sometimes it seems like it just forgets to keep downloading a patch mid-process. It is very bare bones, to say the least. As a result, alternative launchers exist that work faster, can download patches faster and more reliably, can automatically log you in, and may even be necessary prerequisites for other mods to function. A fun fact about this one is that if someone is making use of such a launcher, you can commonly read a lot more details of them playing 14 off of, for instance, their Discord status, than if they play the game with the official launcher. Death recap. In a lot of games, when you die, you're told what killed you, or shown how they did it, mostly in PvP games for that one. In 14, the best you can do is check the battle log and hope you can find what actually killed you. Death recap simply logs everything that happened to your HP bar up to a certain amount of time leading up to your death, saving time in reviewing. Essentially, level 1 is dominated by mods that, for the most part, just saves you time in reviewing things, which for some players itself may be considered cheating. A comparison is that in certain games you can pay real money to progress faster or outright skip parts of progression, and if this sort of progression is considered valuable and important to progress through, some may consider this a type of pay to win, even if marketing has tried to call it pay to save time. If you consider leveling jobs and skipping the MSQ valuable in this sense, then 14 also offers this. Long story short, saving time with mods could be considered cheating, depending on who you ask. Me personally, I think these are all fine. Level 2. Visual mods. From glams to visual look to character adjustments to strange additions, we have it all. For glam, this effectively gives you early access and also general access to outfits and equipment, visually, regardless of whether you actually earned it or bought it. You could use the visual appearance of an ultimate weapon without ever earning it. In some cases, you could access new outfits a month before they are officially available, as long as they are in the game files. You could also use customized, homemade outfits and weapons, visually change how specific actions look to your preference, or use emotes that don't even exist and never will. There even exist mods to connect with other players, so that you can both see the visual choices the other player made, which in short means that it isn't just for your personal viewing pleasure anymore. Unless you want it to be. For the most part, these things are all pretty tame when it comes to game advantage. Sure, the time save angle could be used again, as you could access outfits without doing the work to actually acquire them, but for the most part this is a pretty minor one in the grand scheme of things. Where visual mods can get more dicey is when it comes to the part where you could change the visual appearance of a boss, or the ambience of a boss room, or how mechanics look. Hypothetically, a boss could release whose entire gimmick is obscuring your vision, literally with mechanics covering things up. But someone using mods generally used for visual changes could potentially turn those smoke clouds or whatever into tiny bunnies. And that orange hue in their Phoenix fight could just be turned off, making things easier to see. You could also add, for instance, a brightly colored dot precisely where your pixel location is, to make it easier to see where your character is exactly. Now, the justification to do these things anyway is that for the pixel thing, you can learn to memorize where your pixel location is roughly, or with enough experience, exactly. But internalizing roughly where it is will never be quite as good as it being literally there on your screen. For the visual changes part, some players are visually impaired, and for them, some visual adjustments the game doesn't offer by default could help even the playing field. In a way, the quote-unquote advantage part of the quote-unquote problem comes from when players that definitely didn't need it also get to use this option. It is also worth mentioning, importantly, that 14 typically does not really do much with visually obscuring mechanics like this, and when it does come up as a problem, it is likely an oversight. So while I can dream up this scenario with smoke clouds becoming bunnies, this isn't really a thing. Level 2 is effectively just visual changes, and does require a bit of extra work and rather specific things for it to become an actual game advantage. Level 3. Introducing automation. Cactbot, not an actual bot. One of the options accessible through ACT, which puts a sequence of boss timers on your screen when you're fighting bosses, to help you keep track of what is coming up and happening in a fight. These reminders can even include explanations of what you need to do, so you don't have to figure it out. Cactbot is often likened to Bigwigs and DBM, Deadly Boss Mods, from World of Warcraft, due to their similarities. The justification for using Cactbot is that you could make such a sequence of timers for yourself and slap it on another monitor to get this advantage anyway, or better yet, just learn and memorize the mechanics of the fight. Some players may also be a bit reliant on a raid leader or something to call out mechanics for them, where Cactbot can cover this automatically. Why have your raid leader tell you on every poll what is happening, when Cactbot can do it? The sort of counterpoint and particular advantage of Cactbot is that it can specify to the exact second when a mechanic is landing, which enables a player to be a little greedier than they might normally be. Sometimes, Cactbot can also see what is happening in the battle log before a human being could see it visually in the fight. A simple example of this is that Cactbot would be able to tell whether Shiva from A Realm Reborn brought out a sword or a staff in the first frame of her animation. Automarkers. Also goes by many other names for subterfuge reasons. Given certain specific mechanics, Automarkers evaluates the state of the party and automatically marks players as needed. This can, for instance, instantly resolve the order of positions for Titan's jails in Ultima Weapon Ultimate. Ooh. For certain fights with debuff soups, where everyone has to determine what to do based on several debuffs in a relatively short amount of time, Automarkers can also instantly find the correct answer. The more common justification for this one is that in the cases where Automarkers resolve a debuff soup, without Automarkers, parties have sometimes resorted to having a healer deal with figuring it out manually, so it just ends up being the sucky obligation kind of issue, and Automarkers removes that. In the case of, for instance, Titan's jails, players can mark themselves with a macro to figure things out too, so it isn't as much of an advantage as it might sound. There's also other ways to do the mechanic altogether. But with the time given for these jails, saving even a fraction of a second of time can be huge. Auto ground markers. This one does not exist anymore, but I felt the need to mention it anyway. In the past, it was possible to place and move ground markers mid-fight. This was removed when a tool that could manage and place ground markers automatically was made. The logical justification is similar as before. You could just have a player move around the markers as needed, and was also what was generally done. The problems arrive when you realize to what extremes this could go. With there being exactly 8 ground markers for 8 party members, nothing would prevent you from having it set up such that each player simply has to follow their marker that moves around the arena to indirectly puppet them around to the correct spot. No need for clock spot markers to work around, you just look at where your marker is right now. This is, to say the least, probably a bit too extreme a level of automation. Level 3 covers mods that automate some things, but still is reproducible to some degree by player actions. They help simplify things, or save on brain load, but they don't outright enable you to do something you couldn't do manually yourself. Level 4. Actual helpers. Splatoon. A lot of fights in 14 have attacks with no AoE indicator, or the indicator appears so late that it mostly appears just to show you it got you, or to show you how big it is for next time. You still have to remember what is safe and what is not on your own. This type of mod effectively shows the exact area an attack will hit as early as possible, meaning it simply adds indicators to mechanics that didn't have them. This gives an advantage in positioning, as you will be able to position yourself more greedily, knowing exactly where the attack will land, but may also enable you to make use of tighter safe spots more easily. The justification for this one is sort of twofold. The first one is that, well, again, you could just learn where the mechanics land. You can memorize these things, but it will pretty much never quite live up to the advantage of being able to outright see it on your screen. The second is that some players may feel that it is simply bad design, that part of a boss fight's difficulty is this memory game of remembering where an attack lands. Why not just show us? And from me personally, I can definitely see that. If I logged in one day and everything had proper telegraphs, I wouldn't be complaining. Latency assistance. A pretty blunt truth about 14 is that it handles latency extremely poorly, with some things being difficult or impossible to do correctly, quote-unquote, with a latency above 80 ms, and some things already being tight at around 30 ms. Yes, really. Granted, there's only so much you can do for someone with 300 ms, but these tools help to alleviate some of the problems. Long story short, these tools allow you to, at least when it comes to your rotation, fake a latency of below 20, if not outright 0 ms. You might even be able to fake a negative latency, which would be literal cheating. The fact of the matter is that some players play on a legitimate latency of below 10 ms, and these kinds of tools simply help even the playing field, so that the ones that can't move to live next door to the game servers also have a chance to play at this latency. The main point where this becomes an unfair advantage is mainly that console players can't use it, and due to the legality of mods, many PC players may refuse to risk using it. Rotation helpers. You know how actions you could use will glow? Imagine if instead of that, only the best choice glows, effectively guiding you through the rotation without thinking. Another option could be that hotbars can adjust more dynamically, ranging from showing specific buttons when you are in specific points in your rotation, to swapping around buttons so that you simply have to press the attack button and the correct action is used. The justification for these include: you could have images or a video playing out your optimal rotation as you fight, which might be fine to replace glowing buttons. You could just memorize or learn what the right buttons are. Another justification, which is more derogatory, is that the rotations are rather simple anyway, so what difference does it make that they use a mod to make it one button and so on? Some players with disabilities may also use a tool like this to allow them to more easily keep up. Personally, I feel like this is around where I draw the line, as it is reaching a point where you're using mods to play the game almost for you. If you have a disability that makes it so that this is the only way you can play, sure, but I also start wondering if, maybe, you would have had more fun doing something else. Not saying you are not welcome here, just saying that there might be a better match for your capabilities. Level 4 effectively covers things that assist the player to such a degree that it is actually impossible to do these things without the mod in question. It gives you an irreplaceable advantage over someone who does not have this mod. Level 5. Why are we even here? Auto-rotation. Rather than the game telling you what to do or even just having you press the attack button, what if the rotation just played for you? This could further expand to movement being automated too, and when it comes to this, it morphs into a different mod, quote-unquote. The justification here tends to come down to the rotation is so simple and boring anyway, why does it matter? Argument. Literally cheat engine. Even MMORPGs can sometimes be accessed by cheat engine. And if the server doesn't sanity check your input and doesn't seem to mind, then cheat engine gets to do what it wants to. A particular example of this, which you may have seen if you have seen bots in the game, is that you can move your character's location to anywhere in the current zone with cheat engine settings, as your character's location is determined client-side for the most part. Obviously, a bit like with the latency assistance, if you do something that is actually out of the realm of possibility too frequently, it is pretty obvious what is going on, and it would be difficult to claim you are not cheating. I've not met anyone that tried to justify the use of this one beyond simply demonstrating that you can do it. Literally botting. Among legitimate players, this is more common in gathering and crafting, but may come up for leveling jobs, or in the context of particularly perfectionistic optimizers in combat content. For the first three, gathering, crafting, and leveling, the justification generally comes down to either everyone's doing it, more common for gatherers and crafters, or, well, no one would enjoy doing this anyway, both of which essentially being justified with the suggestion that respecting the content, quote-unquote, is irrelevant because they, and presumably their friend circle and more, don't enjoy it. For the optimizer side of things, if you wanted to beat a savage boss in the most optimal way possible, you would of course need the best gear in the game, the best food, and the best potions. You would also need the best combination of jobs, and then you would need to, for each individual player, figure out the exact, perfectly optimal rotation sequence from start to finish. And then you would have to repeatedly perform this perfection over and over and over and over again until random things like crits and direct hits go enough in your favor, and maybe in some cases, mechanics play out in a specific optimal way. As something like this could take 10, hundreds, or even thousands of attempts, and at some point, you might actually be able to do it all in your sleep, some players might feel justified in simply using automation to repeat the process until you get the lucky shot. I will say, at the very least, that I do think it is a shame that randomness plays such a big factor here. So, where do you draw the line? I can imagine it is also not a straight line. For example, some players may feel that automating some things is okay, while at the same time having issues with certain visual mod changes. So if you feel it makes more sense to approach each point individually, feel free to do that too. What makes 14 truly the cheater's paradise is that all of these options are allowed to exist as long as you don't prance around and show off too much. As long as you don't hurt others' experience with them. And finally, I'm sure I missed or skipped over particular plugins, mods, or third-party tools. So you are welcome to tell us about another option if you feel like it in the comments. Now, that is all for this video. Thank you so much for watching. If you would like to support me and my channel more directly, you can become a member like these wonderful people here. You can also alternatively support me through Twitch or Ko-Fi. Links in the description. You can also support the channel by letting the YouTube algorithm know by liking the video, leaving a comment, subscribing, sharing, and hitting the bell to get notified when next I post a video. Fun fact, if you think lag is bad now, then consider that way back in actual AR, everything, movement and actions included, had a built-in roughly 0.3 seconds of delay, just for fun. This made certain mechanics extra brutal, as for example, Titan Extreme may have required you to move in advance before you could even see the mechanic incoming, to even have a chance of dodging. And let's not forget, if you fell off the arena back then, you were not coming back until the wipe.